Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today, continuing our Road to Eternal Weekend series of videos, we are playing what is generally considered the best combo deck in the format right now, which is the Karn Forge deck. This had the best win rate of combo decks at Eternal Weekend Asia, and I would imagine it's going to do relatively well at the future Eternal Weekends as well, because let's face it, what it's doing is intrinsically powerful. And the thing that it's doing is making a boatload of mana and drawing a boatload of cards, which throughout the history of Magic the Gathering has always been a good thing to do. So the main way we're doing this is using Manifold Keys and Voltaic Keys to untap Grim Monoliths and Basalt Monoliths to just generate lots and lots of mana. And then once we're doing that, we can dump that mana into things like the One Ring, and then untap this a bunch, draw a bunch of cards. Mystic Forge, where we just keep playing cards off the top with all this mana we've assembled. Or Karn to go and get something that's just going to go over the top. And those things that can go over the top can be something like a Paradox Engine, where we just get to untap the One Ring over and over again and basically draw our entire deck, which is pretty good. We also have Glaring Fleshraker, which whenever we're casting our spells can then just get us mana back. And if we're casting like 1 mana spells, they're basically free off the top whilst pinging our opponent out and dealing damage. It's just a very solid deck at doing what it does, really. And we have 4 Vexing Baubles as protection in our main deck, which is quite a wild thing to be able to run here. All of our lands are going to be producing more mana for us in one way or the other, right? So we have the Ancient Tombs here. We have the Urza's Tower, which combos with our Planar Nexus, so it can tap for 3 here. We've got Urza's Workshop, which combos with the Tower and the Saga, effectively making the Saga add additional mana via the Workshop. And obviously the Saga can go and get us a key, which is then more mana as well. Sometimes we can do Urza Saga construct things. Generally speaking, that is the weakest angle that our deck has, but it's still a fine angle and works into things like Null Rod quite well. Sideboard-wise, we're mainly just a Karn board here. We sometimes will be boarding in our Wastescape Battlemages, our Faerie Macabres, and our Dismembers, whether we need removal, Graveyard Hate, or blowing up some problem permanents. Then we also have Disruptor Flutes. Those will likely be coming in either as a 1 or a 2 of. And everything else here is basically just Karn board. So we get the Ballista if we need to just ping our opponent to death with all the mana we've assembled. We have Mightstone and Weakstone. So we can either draw 2 cards with this. -5/-5 a creature. So this is a removal spell that works under a Collector Roof that we can get with the Great Creator to then kill the Collector Roof potentially. Also, this taps for mana, so it kind of refunds itself in a way. The Lattice for Lattice Lock, the Liquimetal Coating to shut our opponents out of the game. Some more Graveyard Hate. We want the 0 mana Graveyard Hate so we can find it with the Karn and immediately deploy it. And we've already spoken about the Paradox Engine. So yeah, I played this on the channel recently. I will post the link in the description if you want to go back and watch that. The deck felt very good, very smooth, and incredibly powerful. And let's see if we can just do that again. What I did notice last time I played this was that the hands without Grim Monolith definitely felt worse. But every time I opened up on a Grim Monolith, it just felt like I couldn't lose. So let's see if we can replicate that experience. So like and subscribe, let's get into this one. And if you want to see my videos early, become a YouTube member for £1 a month and you get to do exactly that. Let's do some Karn Forging. We're on the play for round 1. What does our hand do here? So we could play this Saga and this Vexing Bauble and this Mox Opal, obviously not in that order. But then it doesn't really take us anywhere. I think we can do better than this. Our deck is very explosive. So we have a turn 1 Fleshraker that we can then start trying to get a bit of joy with via some artifacts and stuff. I think this is fine. I'm a little bit worried about just having the Ancient Tomb, but we are on the play. So we're less likely to have our first turn play countered. Opponent's mulligan to 5. Are they doing some broken combo stuff over there as well? Let's get old Fleshraker into play. So the Voltaic Key is effectively free here because it replaces itself. A Wasteland would be bad for us. Our opponent mulled to 5. Doesn't mean they're a Wasteland deck or not, but we'll see. Alright, we've got a Mox Diamond coming in here. A Ghost Quarter. I would not like that to be pointed at our land, and it doesn't seem to be the case. A Sylvan Library, sure, with the new treatment on. Drawing a land here would be pretty good. Did not draw a land. Let's Voltaic Key. We could have cast the Kozilek's Command as a cantrip, but I don't think that's really where I need to be here. We can still cast it now as a cantrip. This kind of replaces itself. It's just 2 mana, draw a card good for us right now. If we draw into a soul land, we get to play another Fleshraker. It's not actually that bad, is it? Okay. I'm not a big fan of this play. Do a very measly Kozilek's Command, and we just drew another one. Okay. Not really where I want it to be. But it gets us closer to the next land we have. If we can find another land, then our hand really pops off. If we find a Grim Monolith, it pops off. But now our opponent knows we're missing land drops, and they're quite likely to point his Ghost Quarter at us. So next turn we can cast a Fleshraker, get a mana back. And if we find a land as well, then we get to do a lot of good stuff. But if our opponent mashes up our land, then we're going to have a lot of trouble. The Sylvan Library makes me think our opponent might be on a green-white depths list, although Ghost Quarter isn't the most common. So it might be on something a little bit spicy over there. And there's a Saga, good cards are good. Are they going to Ghost Quarter us? Oh, they're crop rotating away their Saga. Is this just for a wasteland? A Tabernacle. Okay, we'll shuffle our deck for no reason. We don't have any wastes in here. Not looking spectacular for us right now. Oh, we can do a lot of stuff. And I do think our opponent is on a lands build now. So we'll say no to this one. We'll say yes to this one. And Urza's Saga. Got a land. We are clocking. We're doing some damage here. Our opponent needs to find something. Because if we just keep turning a 2-2 sideways, that will eventually be good enough. We can get like a Lotus Petal off of our Urza's Saga, if needs be. Crop rotation. I think we're about to see a wasteland hit play. There it is. Say goodbye to our Glaring Fleshraker. This is going to be a difficult one to come back from. I think this matchup should be pretty good for us by and large, though. We don't have any option to pay here, so goodbye. Just play a Saga. We can do a lot in one turn if we get one turn where we have some mana underneath us. That's kind of what our deck does. It just rattles off a bunch of stuff. I think not having Grim Monolith is certainly a little bit awkward for us. Whenever you have Grim Monolith with this deck, you feel unbeatable. Alright, we have no plays. We have 2 mana next turn. So if we draw a Grim Monolith, we can play the Grim Monolith, untap it with Key, play something big and useful. Now our opponent is only on 6. We can quite easily finish them off with the Glaring Fleshraker if we get the opportunity to. But our opponent here is digging away with their Sylvan Library. Is this going to be the Life from the Loam? It is. So we're getting our Urza Saga wastelanded here. Alright, opponent. Understood. And Urza Tower. We're just in the wasteland lock here. Do I want to continue playing this game? I don't think so. Like, there's some niche situations where it works out for us, but I don't think it's worth playing on there. So, what do we like here? I like the Disruptor Flutes to name Wasteland. I also like Wastescape Battlemage potentially to blow up our opponent's permanents might have. Because I think they're lands, I don't want to broaden these Dismembers. So the Wastescape Battlemage can't blow up a Null Rod. Because where are we going to get the green mana from? If they have a Collector Reef, we also can't. I guess we have the Planar Nexus, right? We have 4 Planar Nexus for our green mana. It's a little tight, but I think that's fine-ish. What would I like to remove from our deck? I think we probably need to move some of the top end, because our opponent is going to be just really taxing our mana. And as long as we have our mana underneath us, we probably are alright. Actually, Vexing Bauble. Vexing Bauble is a weird one, because they have access to Force of Vigor, so I wouldn't mind having a couple of Baubles in to stop that. But we'll take out a couple of Forge as well. This is a hand where we can start off on an Urza Saga and play an Urza Saga game, if that's a thing that actually matters to us. I'm not sure it does. We can't make a turn 2 Forge. I don't think an Urza Saga game against our opponent's deck really works very effectively, so we're going to mulligan. What do we have here? We have a Key. We're going to struggle to get mana up to the Basalt Monolith, but once we do, things are okay. If this was a Grim Monolith, I'd feel a lot happier about it. We're just going to keep basically mana here. So it's all mana of one shape or another. Glaring Fleshraker can be mana as well as a win condition. I think this is where you want to be. I could see mulling to 5 on this hand. Get the Saga tick in because we can get a useful 1-drop out of it if it lasts long enough. I don't want our Planar Nexus to get wastelanded because the Planar Nexus is what we're going to get green mana from if we need that. In Exploration, we're going to see a wasteland follow up. We are. Goodbye, Urza Saga. Yep, they're just going to keep hitting every land that we drop here. A Voltaic Key. Again, I want to preserve our ability to have coloured mana in case we need to Wastescape Battlemage something down the road. Okay, if we can find a soul land and they don't wasteland us, then we can play the Monolith and then all of a sudden we're really ticking. A Life from the Loam, you say? Alright, we're just in the bin here. A Wastescape Battlemage. That doesn't really do what we need it to do. Okay, so we need to draw an Ancient Tomb and a Grim Monolith before our opponent can defeat us. Get back your Wasteland. Expedition map. You can get Beseiju. Okay, so we've got part of the equation that we're looking for here. So we just need the Grim Monolith now. Or a Lotus Petal, or a Mox Opal. That gives us the ability to play the Basalt Monolith off this Ancient Tomb so our opponent doesn't get to wasteland us. And then we can just tap the keys, and then every land that we draw for turn just gets to do a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, so we're going to see the Saga back. Then we got like 9 draws that are really good for us here, which is quite a lot. Voltaic Key. That is not one of those 9 draws. We'll save it because we can play all this stuff out once we've got our Fleshraker. What are they going to search for here? Is it Basagi? It is the Basagi. It's certainly getting tough for us here. You don't see a lot of lands in the meta right now, and this matchup doesn't feel great. If we don't get to do our big explosive thing on turn 1, they are just going to grind us into absolute oblivion. And that certainly feels like where we're headed. Look at all those resources they've got over there. Wastelands and Sagas as far as the eye can see. I think if I were them, I would play a different land other than this Wasteland, because that means if you want to activate... So if they get in a situation where they can activate both Sagas, then they can untap, activate both Sagas, then play the Wasteland in hand and still have a Wasteland up. Just a minor thing. Obviously, I don't know what's exactly in their hand. That's something I'd want to try and do. Disruptor Flute, you say. Now, the problem with playing out this Disruptor Flute is we lose our Ancient Tomb in response, which is not good. I think we still have to pass. We're just looking for the Mox, the Lotus Petal, the Grim Monolith. Now, they do have a Basagi, which is a little bit worrying. But because we have double key, we can untap in response to the first untap. So the Basagi won't get everything done that it needs to. But yeah, so now they double construct. I think they're going to double construct again. I think they might only make 1 construct because they played the Wasteland out last turn. Unless they have another Wasteland in hand, which is perfectly fine. Interesting they're leaving up the Basagi over the Wasteland there, because the Wasteland taps for green anyway. Alright, a Vexing Bauble. That shuts down our Mox lines, but we can still draw Grim Monolith. They discarded the Basagi. Obviously, they're just going to buy it back with a life from the loam. And we're going to take 10 this turn. And basically, we just need next turn to be really good. I have a feeling it's not going to be, though. Oh. So now our Ancient Tomb does nothing. That is a big problem for us. So it's going to take us to 1 life. So Ancient Tomb is off. We've just got absolutely nothing here. Yeah. Like, getting Wasteland locked from turn 1 is really tough for this deck. If we'd have drawn a Grim Monolith instead of a Basalt Monolith, I think this game would have been absolutely fine. Which is kind of shows the difference in power level between Basalt Monolith and Grim Monolith. Yeah, not a matchup I gave much thought to with this Karn Forge deck, but it does seem like it's going to be a tricky one. Alright, let's go to round 2. We have quite a bit of mana here, but we don't have the big mana that we're looking for. I think we can mulligan and get something more powerful. Are we supposed to go to 5 here? Where's these Grim Monolith key starts that we had before when I played this deck? So what do we do with this hand? Nothing on turn 1. Nothing really on turn 2 unless we're playing a Fleshraker. Nah, let's go bigger. A bunch of keys. Nowhere to go with them. I guess we play an Urza Saga game is what this hand is telling us to do. And maybe we're supposed to go to 4 there, but then it becomes even harder to have the mana and the payoff in our hand. A tapped Mystic Sanctuary. Okay. Ancient Tomb, not the worst. I do like having access to more mana down the stretch. So we can just make some moderately sized Urza Saga constructs. And if our opponent's on some sort of slower control deck, where the Mystic Sanctuary kind of suggests a slower deck that wants to play enough lands that this becomes live. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's some sort of blue-white or Jeskai based control deck. So if we play this turn to activate this, next turn we'll have to use this to do this. So it's better off to play the tower if we want to maximize the amount of constructs we're making. The Manifold Key can make our constructs unblockable, if that becomes a thing we want to do. It's a nice little bonus bit of text on this one. Alright, some white mana. Back to basics. What am I supposed to do about that? Would I like 1/3/3 at the cost of 2 lands? Because we have mana in hand, I think I will make the pressure here. This doesn't feel great. I think we want the Mox Opal here. Get some mana that helps us out. I think I'll play out a Saga with the intention of not tapping that. Vexing Bauble to grow our construct. Bash for 5. So we can get 1 construct out of our Saga. And then obviously it can find us some more bits and pieces. This is a load-bearing Mox Opal right now. A Brainstorm from our opponent. Their own Mystic Sanctuary is tapped though, so it wasn't entirely free for them to play that back to basics. It did have a slight cost on their side, but it certainly feels worse from our side. Alright, I would like to attack with our construct. I think I'm just going to play the One Ring, especially if they're tapping low here. No Force of Wills. Spell Pierce is the one thing they could have here. That jam us right up. Right, we're just in with the One Ring. That is excellent news. Draw some cards. Another copy of the One Ring in case we need to reset it later. Sure. So the land should continue to flow for us. If we can draw some kind of mana and some... We want mana. I guess something like a Fleshraker would be really useful here too. This is just going to be a Snapcaster Brainstorm. So our opponent is digging for something. The One Ring should just take over this game because the card is bananas. Right, they're brainstormed. We don't know if they're brainstorm locked. It's possible. So we draw. With this trigger on the stack, I would like to activate the One Ring just in case it gives us a better idea what we wanted to get with our Saga. 1 mana, 2 mana. Okay, we want to get a Lotus Petal here. So we can untap this Basalt Monolith. Can untap this Basalt Monolith again. We can do some scrying, make some guys. That's 5 little bits of mana that we have access to now. Our opponent can't really interact because of our Vexing Bauble. This Lotus Petal can definitely go to the bottom. We don't need that. We don't need another copy of the One Ring. I'd like to play a Karn here. What does the Karn do? Like, it's an annoying thing our opponent has to deal with. I don't actually like the Monolith here. We need more starting mana. Do I like the Fleshraker enough to play it here? Or is it the Karn? If we get the Karn, we can then get like a Paradox Engine. And that's pretty bananas. Let's get the Karn out. And we know it's going to resolve because of our Vexing Bauble. Combo deck with Vexing Bauble feels pretty gross when it gets to do its thing. So if we get this Paradox Engine, then we're pretty close to just being able to do everything we want to do here. We have the 1 mana from our Eldrazi spawn, which can be used to activate the Manifold Key. We also have the Mox Opal as well. And once we start activating our keys on our Monolith, that should be a-okay. They're going to attack our Karn down to 1, which is fine by me. Karn has already grabbed the card it is required to grab. Something like Wrath of the Skies could be a pretty scary card for us to face here. They're keeping mana open, which suggests to me that they might have some interaction. Let's untap this Basalt Monolith. Draw some cards with a One Ring, just in case we find some more land. We did find some more land. Okay. Let's get Glaring Fleshraker out in the world. Let's untap the Monolith. Alright, our opponent's scooping because we're just going to ping them a bunch of times. They know we've got a Paradox Engine, so we get up to 5 mana, we start playing some spells, and it's all lights out for our opponent. Okay, so a blue-white control deck. Wastescape Battlemage can blow up back to basics. They might have some kind of Stony Silence in their list as well, so that's probably worth considering. I don't think we want Fairies or Dismembers. Don't think we want the Disruptor Flutes. So if we're going to fit in a couple of Battlemage, normally it's things like trimming a key and things like that. So I'll put 1 Forge in the board because we can go fetch it with a Karn if we need to. And I think that's probably all we're doing. This is not a deck that requires a lot of sideboarding. We're mainly just a Karn tutor package anyway. Alright, we have a Grim Monolith hand. That's what we like to see. Play out a Lotus Petal. Play out an Ancient Tomb. Let's go for a Grim Monolith. See if they want to interact with this one. The more I play with this deck, the more I think the card that you should be interacting with is the Grim Monolith. Because it gets so much more difficult to play the game we want to play when we don't have the Grim Monolith. So it's a Spell Pierce, a Consign to Memory. That is definitely going to be a useful card against us. That's for sure. We have a lot of payoffs, so as long as we can deploy them, we might be alright. So I'd quite like to get the Mystic Forge in. Alright, our opponent is on whatever they have in their hand there. I think they might have another Consign, which is why we're floating the Mystic Forge out before the One Ring. The One Ring is the more powerful card. Alright, they had a Force of Will pitching Jace the Mind Sculptor. Oldie but a goodie. Alright, 5 spells in our opponent's hand. We did not draw the land that we wanted here. I will deploy a Vexing Bauble and a Manifold Key. We are taking quite a lot of damage from our Ancient Tomb, but our opponent is not going to pressure our life total. So we have a lot of life to work with. So Force of Will is now off, which means resolving this One Ring should be a lot easier. If our opponent misses on land, we can always just do Karn, get Liquimetal Coating, and just make sure our opponent never gets to play the game. Okay, they're Brainstorm locked. Kozilek's Command. That's not the one we wanted. Are we firing this off for 1? We need to get something moving here. We have so many payoffs. I think it is worth just cycling this one. Glaring Fleshraker. That does some work, doesn't it? I kind of just want to land given the payoffs we have though. But I think it's reasonable to keep because it doesn't stay on top of our library. We get to draw it immediately. So we still have a shot at drawing a land next turn. And the Fleshraker is a fine thing to cast here. Opponent is obviously still Brainstorm locked. Can I have a 3 mana 2/2? It's just a 3 mana 2/2 opponent. What's the worst that can happen? No Consign to Memory over there. So next turn we can play another Fleshraker, and then every spell we play gets us 2 mana back. So if we're playing any cheap spells, we end up just absolutely powering it out. Alright, another Brainstorm from our opponent. Our opponent is conceding because they're getting Brainstorm locked. So if we draw a land next turn, we didn't draw a land. I was going to say, if we draw a land next turn, I'd be inclined to play the Karn, because I don't want to play the Karn until I can Karn, get the Liquimetal Coating, and use it in the same turn cycle, because otherwise we're kind of just playing the Karn. We could be playing something like a Fleshraker, which makes all of our future draws better. Because the Karn won't lock them out. It'll take 2 turns to lock them out, and we may as well just play a Fleshraker here, because the upside for the next turn is really high. So this turn we could have played like a Fleshraker into a Vexing Bauble, which then nets us +1 mana and pings our opponent a little bit. That's pretty good. We can play the Wastescape Battlemage effectively for free and just start snowballing. But yeah, our opponent did not have a great time there. Let's go to round 3. We've got an opener that really doesn't sit well with me here, so we're going to mulligan this one. It doesn't do anything. Okay, a soul land is an important part of how we would like to play this game. We can play a turn 2 Mystic Forge if we want to. We keep this and throw back a Forge or a Pithing Needle. We already have a second Forge, and the Vexing Bauble should probably let us resolve the first one, and the Pithing Needle might randomly be relevant against something our opponent's doing. And it is a 1 mana artifact, which is something good to play under Glaring Fleshraker situations. Right, we'll play out the Saga, play out the Petal before playing out our Bauble so that we don't accidentally counter our own spell, play out the Bauble, and pass. So our opponent doesn't get to play cheaper spells here, like 0 mana spells. But that might not stop them from thought seizing us. Yep, that is the problem with this hand. If we'd have kept the second Forge, we would have been more able to play around the thought seize. But we still have the Urza Saga backup plan for now, which is also fine. Our creatures should be quite large. A wasteland, you say? Okay, I will make our guy. It's a 3/3. We're on the board. Fatal Push is obviously going to be pretty good against this. We're going to take out our Pithing Needle. Sure. They've dealt themselves 4 damage. Attack for 3. I don't know if we want to crack this Kozilek's command, and if we want to do it for X equals 3. So I'm going to wait and see what our opponent does. Maybe we need to kill one of their creatures. Are we going to sacrifice a Lotus Petal to get an additional 1 spawn here? I don't know. A Dauthi Voidwalker. What does that actually do? We don't really care about our graveyard as a zone. I think I don't know if I want to crack this Lotus Petal though. It does replace itself, but it shrinks our construct. I think we're just going to go in for the bigger Kozilek's command here. And hopefully what we find means that we are doing alright. I don't really want to just keep playing this Saga Gaming. What does the Great Creator do for us here? 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 was in our sideboard. You get a Walking Ballista, that's not the most exciting here. Kind of need the 1 ring. I'll still take the Karn. I think it's good enough. So the Vexing Bauble will counter the Dauthi Voidwalker. A Grim Monolith, you say? Does that change anything here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we could get a 4-drop here. Uncertain how I feel about this. Let's get a Karn in. And let's get a Monolith in. What do I want to get here? We have 4 mana. Is there anything that I actually want from this selection right now? I don't think so. I think what I'm actually going to do is plus on the Vexing Bauble and attack for 4. They can't block with the Dauthi Voidwalker because it has Shadow. Let's see if our opponent wants to attack the Karn or us. So we're going to attack for 5 here, but next turn we're probably just going to get something with the Karn when we're going to have a lot more mana available. So we can Lattice lock our opponent next turn, for example. And that's likely to be good enough. Although, tapping our Ancient Tombs can be a little scary for us. Our opponent has a Karn as well. I see. So they're probably a mono-black Helm combo deck. I'm just plussing the Karn. Okay. And do we just kill our opponent this turn? So we can't tap this for mana. We have to kill the Karn first if we want to do that. We could go and get this Mightstone and Weakstone. And what does this do? This -5 is a creature. So we can kill this Dauthi Voidwalker with it. Alternatively, if we play this Mystic Forge, this becomes a 4/4. Then we animate the Grim Monolith. It's a 2/2. That's 6 damage. That's still not quite enough there. We're 1 shy. We could play the Mystic Forge and keep ripping, but the problem with doing that is our opponent is threatening a Helm kill next turn, provided they kill our Karn. But I guess if we kill their Darth Voidwalker, how are they going to get rid of our Karn? We could minus this, get a Disruptor Flute, and stop the Karn so they don't get to tutor anything, because they might have some other scary things to tutor. We could play the Forge, animate this, attack this, see what's on top of our library, but then we're cold to the Helm if they just have it in hand. Are we just getting the Mightstone and Weakstone here? I think we probably are. So we can attack the Karn, so if they activate anything with it, then if they minus it, then it dies, and then we can always just plus the Karn on the Mightstone next turn for lethal damage. Curious game. 2 main deck Karn decks. Attack with Ancient Tomb for 2 mana. That makes our construct on its own lethal. So we can have 2 lethal attackers next turn. If they get something like an Ensnaring Bridge, our deck is kind of designed to be good against Ensnaring Bridge anyway. They're making our Mightstone Weakstone into a 5/5. Damnation. I see. Okay. Planar Nexus. I think we're casting this. Saving a little bit of life. Glaring Fleshraker. Quite like the look of that one for next turn. Right, let's animate the Grim Monolith. And we have to attack the Karn here. Stop it from tutoring. Weird game. Our opponent might be a Beseech the Mirror deck with like a one-off Damnation. Lay Down in the Void. Yeah, they're definitely a Helm combo deck there. I think I can afford to take 2 life here. Can I? 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just trying to work out. Well, first things first, we're animating the Mystic Forge and we're attacking our opponent. We'll take this Karn out. If I take 2 life, how much mana do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4. They probably can't kill us with a Walking Ballista. So I will play this friend out. We play this off the top. It will be countered, but it won't be on top of our library anymore, and that's fine. We still get this trigger as well. Play another one of these out. We could play this for X's 1. I don't mind doing that. Our opponent's conceding the game. What would our little things have found us? We would have found a Grim Monolith. We kill our opponent next turn. It's just a case of what they do on their turn, but they'd have to top deck the Helm itself, I think. I'm surprised they didn't continue playing, though. Alright. Some kind of Helm combo. Wastescape Battlemage blows up some of their scary things. Disruptor Flute can stop their combo as well, so maybe we want one of these in the main one of these board. Dismember also stops their combo, their creature that they need. So we have 5 cards I'm interested in. We can shave a key. That seems reasonable. This isn't really a matchup where we need the Vexing Bauble, so they can go... Vexing Bauble does stop the Beseech the Mirror is the only thing. Is it worth having 4 baubles in just to counter their Beseech the Mirror, when we can have these things that are just going to be generally good anyway? I think I'd rather just have the generally good stuff and ball in that way. I don't like this hand. We need access to some of our fast mana. Let's mulligan. We have much more powerful things we can do with our deck. We're on the draw. That gives us 2 draw steps to find a land. To find a land, our hand is absolutely bananas. I think I'm willing to keep this one, and I'm just trying to work out if we keep the Fleshraker or the... It's probably the Fleshraker. Double Monolith is so much mana. And the One Ring will pay us out quite nicely. We can get Thoughtseize though. A Dark Ritual. Into a Dathi Voidwalker, into a Thoughtseize. It is the full combo, so we're probably going to lose the Dismember unless they want the One Ring here. One Ring, pretty good. I think Mono Black is an underrated archetype right now in Legacy. They took our Dismember, sure. Alright, let's just go wild, shall we? Grim Monolith. Grim Monolith. Key. Untap Grim Monolith. Cast the One Ring. Let's draw a card. It's not a thing we get to play here, so we'll just carry on. Yeah, turn 1 One Ring is pretty bananas. That's why we kept the hand. It had a lot of opportunity to go out of this world, and that seems to be where we're at. Bowmaster is the thing our opponent could have. They did not. Okay. Let's untap this Grim Monolith. Do we play out this tower or this Nexus? Play out the Nexus here. Let's get this on the go. I could do like a little Kozilek's Command, but there's not really any need to do that yet. Our opponent could just Dark Ritual into Helm and kill us though. Him to Turak. Sure. It doesn't matter. We have the One Ring. That's going to draw us all the cards we could possibly want. There's a Vault of Whispers, which does suggest that they're playing a Beseech the Mirror line. I don't think this is the particular build of Mono Black that I like best right now. By the time you're watching this, I would have played in the Creators Showdown, where I played a Mono Black deck. So I don't know how that's gone for me, because that's in the future for me, but hopefully it went quite well. Let's have a look. We play out. We lost our tower, which was a shame here. Let's untap this Grim Monolith. Let's cast a Fleshraker. Play our Lotus Petal. Play land out. We don't need to take damage from our lands here. Let's cast this with... Can we do it with both? No. So I can either blow up this artifact or I can bounce this creature. I think I'm just going to bounce the creature. Goodbye to that. We ping them for a bunch. It comes in. We attack for 2, and that's lethal. Not bad. Not bad at all. You got a Fatal Push? They do not. They had a permanent leave play, so Fatal Push would have worked. Alright, yeah, our deck, when we have a Grim Monolith, is bananas, as I said at the top. Let's go to round 4. This is a turn 1 Fleshraker, but then what? Alternatively, it's a turn 2 copy of the One Ring, which is a lot more appealing to me. I think I can keep a turn 2 copy of the One Ring. If we draw a Grim Monolith, we can really go as well, because we can play the Grim Monolith. That turns on Metalcraft, and we just get a turn 1 copy of the One Ring. A Ponder. I think I'll play out my Saga here. I'm a little bit worried about prismatic endings, so I think I'm going to hold the Petal and Mox Opal so we don't play into a prismatic ending here. Also, if something does happen and we end up having to do Fleshraker lines, that's also fine too, because then we'll have some zeros that we can play out. We're playing the as a Saga out so we can just get the Vexing Bauble if our opponent is a counterspell heavy deck. Our opponent's probably in the ballpark of a Nadu deck. Probably the Nadu Zenith deck, which has been quite popular lately. So we could play out the Fleshraker, play this and this. That gives us 2 mana, 3 mana. So that's not quite enough to then play the copy of the One Ring. So I think what we're supposed to do here is play out this Lotus Petal, play the One Ring. They had a Force of Will, pitching a Ponder. Alright, that's a slight punish for that. So we could have gone for the Fleshraker, but the problem is we are under the gun a little bit here, because our opponent's almost certainly going to be doing some Nadu stuff in the very near future. And that's so many cards for us to get through that we need to be doing our own busted thing. Is it Teferi, or is this the Nadu? It's the Teferi. That's fine. They might just cycle this for a card, yeah. I thought they might. Oh, they're bouncing our Urza Saga, so we don't get to pop it. Sure. A Grim Monolith, you say? So we could play out this Urza Tower, play out the Fleshraker, play out the Mox. That doesn't work. So we could play out the Grim Monolith first. And just play... If we just go Grim Monolith into Stick Forge, that's fine. I'm going to hold this Mox so that we can play it out with the Fleshraker in play. And possibly next turn we might be able to just rinse our opponent's entire life total. They're probably getting a Hedge Maze or something like that this turn, so they can dig towards a Nadu. There it is. They left a card on top. Okay. So they need Nadu and Nomads to really pop off here. But if they have that, they'll be drawing 6 cards every turn cycle. Possibly more. There's the Nomads. Uh-oh. Our opponent's got their Broken Draw engine up before ours is. Although they can draw a lot of cards and we might still be able to win here. Because the Zenith decks don't have like an I win button. They just draw a lot of cards and that's hopefully good enough. And often it is. But they're going to have to pass the turn here. Alright, we can just... Okay, Source to Plowshares. I'm just going to exile this top card of my library now. And then we can have 6 this turn. Source to Plowshares, Bristly Bill, Delighted Halfling, more Nomads. So more Nomads means more draws. More creatures means more draws. Yeah. I don't think this is a particularly healthy thing to exist. But none of these cards really stop us from winning the game right now. But they're about to draw 6 more cards. So we play out the Nexus. That gives us a lot more mana off of our tower. Let's go for the Fleshraker here. Swords to Plowshares. So we want them to not find a land that taps for white here. In the top 6 cards. Leovold, sure. Sylvan Safekeeper. That doesn't impact the board just this turn. Windswept Teeth, that does. That gives them the plow for this. 1, 2. Have we got any mana floating? We do not. Let's cast this Manifold Key. There's a Force of Will. You're countering a Manifold Key. They get to Green Sun Zenith at instant speed because of the Teferi. So this gets them a Dryad Arbor, which allows them to draw 2 more cards. Right, that's your lot this turn, opponent. They are going to copy... They are going to counter our copy of the One Ring, which is the problem here. Cast this Manifold Key. Exile top card of our library. We don't want that one. Don't really want that one either. So we could untap the Forge and try and get a little bit deeper here. We know that our One Ring isn't going to resolve. How are we supposed to beat... I guess we can try the One Ring still. Force the Force of Will out of our opponent's hand. But they're going to draw 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. They're going to draw at least 16 cards. So they can draw the whole deck, basically. So they're going to have access to all of their things next turn. So we need to try and win this turn. Because they're going to have their whole deck in their hand next turn. Nope, we're not going to be what our opponent's doing there. Oh, Nardu. Why are you so broken? So, Dismembers. Yes, please. Disruptor Flutes on Nomads. Yes, please. Nothing else we really want here. We take out one of our keys. There is also the threat of Collector Oof. How are we supposed to actually handle the Collector Oof? Do we need Wastescape Battlemages as well? Can we realistically board in this many things? Maybe we just have to not care about their Nardu and just hope that we can win before it comes online. Take out one Forge, we can always grab it with a Karn. The Vexing Baubles are good. Pithing Needle, we can always use that to stop the Nomads. That gets us some way towards where we need to be. Kozilek's Command can kill the Collector Roof, so maybe we don't need these Battle Mages. Actually, we just want the 2 Dismembers. I'll try that. Oh dear, oh dear. We need one of those turn 1 rings. Those are the sorts of hands we want. Okay, Vexing Bauble is a really important part of our game plan. I very much like to keep this Vexing Bauble around. Our hand is a little bit slower. Well, not really actually, I suppose, because we have the Planar Nexus so we can play this 1 ring. But we can play it even slower if we need to Pithing Needle. Alright, we're just going to go get this 1 ring in now. Start drawing some cards. Grim Monolith, not unhappy to see you. They could tutor for a Collector Roof this turn. Alternatively, they could miss on land and have nothing. Big fan of them having nothing here. Why did you keep your hand if it didn't do anything? Obviously, we don't know what's in our opponent's hand. Play this as a tower out. That's Grim Monolith. That's Grim Monolith. How much mana have we got here? We can Karn here. So we get the Liquimetal Coating this turn. I kind of want just to get this Paradox Engine in play, though. We don't have the follow-up to immediately untap everything. We're 1 mana shy of just winning the game on the spot. But I'm not really sure what our opponent can do about this situation. They didn't do anything with their turn 2, and they're scooping it up. Alright, I'm not sure why our opponent kept their hand. Maybe they were banking on some Force of Will action, but it could have only been 1 Force of Will. Maybe they had Force of Will and Force of Vigor. That would probably do it. Alright, let's just resubmit and start off with a Bauble again. Bauble is king. We do not have a Bauble. That makes me sad. This hand is too slow to beat an Nardu deck, so we have to mulligan this. This is a turn 2 copy of the 1 ring with a Dismember. I think that is keepable. And we'll throw back a Workshop. Tropical Island, Delighted Halfling. This is a turn 1 copy of the 1 ring into potential Force of Will. Now, these cards are similar enough that I think we're just going to go for the more powerful one straight up. If this resolves, we're laughing. Unless they go and get the Collector Roof, but we obviously have the removal spell for that. Grim Monolith. I like having access to more mana in our deck that needs lots and lots of mana. You're going to go get Collector Roof. Going to waste your time with that. Here it is. Now, our Dismember has to resolve. Not the easiest thing to necessarily assure. Right, they have a Force of Will. That is a problem. Are we playing out this Grim Monolith? I don't think so. That's why they didn't spend any counter magic. They were just planning on getting a Collector Roof and protecting it. And I honestly think that's going to be good enough here. What removal spells do we have? Kozilek's Command can answer it if we can find another mana source as well as the Kozilek's Command. Alright, they got the Bird Wizard. You got the Nomads? If you got the Nomads, I'll just straight up scoop here. Because we're not beating our opponent drawing 8 cards every turn, so 16 per turn cycle. Alright, we're down to 10 life. An Ancient Tomb. Alright, I will play out a 1-drop that doesn't cost us life. Now we just need the Kozilek's Command or our other Dismember. The other Dismember is getting a little bit dicey now. Yeah, this is 5. That's half our life total. Between the 1 ring and our Ancient Tombs. Alright, they're tagging their Nardu here. Yeah, between the 1 ring and their Ancient Tombs. Our Ancient Tombs. We're going to be dead. Yep. So they just use the cantrip. They just use the Caracas as like a cantrip. It's an expensive one that costs 4 mana, but sure. Yeah, we are just stone cold dead to that. We had the answer, but they had the answer to our answer. And we are cooked there. I keep saying it on the channel, but these Nardu decks are really strong. I know I played I didn't play this particular Nardu Zenith build, but I played a Nardu Zenith build on the channel recently, and I didn't particularly like the configuration of that build. But I think the builds I've been playing against the last few days, where they've had slightly deeper Zenith packages, and they're not trying to go too much into the control-y stuff and are doing more of the green stuff rather than trying to be a blue-white control deck, I think those decks have been smashing me up pretty fiercely every time. All right, let's go to the final round. We're currently 2-2, so we're looking to see if we can put a positive record on the board. A turn 2 copy of the One Ring with redundant copies to go. Sure, I will take that. Start off with just an Urza's Tower, nothing scary here. Windswept Heath, Mox Diamond. Seeing a forest, are we going to get wastelanded here? Delighted Halfling, okay. So probably on something a little bit different over there. I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to just take out this Mox Diamond here. Is that realistically better than the One Ring though? The One Ring is pretty darn good. I think I'm going to play the Karn and plus it. I think our opponent is on some sort of Nadu deck. I'm going to keep the Lotus Petal in hand in case you draw a Fleshraker. We want to be able to maximize it. Lush Portico from our opponent. Put one card on top. What? Gadok Teague. That's a bit rude. Okay. So we can't cast spells with mana value 4 or greater, which is a significant part of what our deck is trying to accomplish. Okay, sideboard, help me out here. What is our tech for this situation we're in? Non-creature spells. Okay. So we can still minus this, get this Walking Ballista. Alright, our opponent's scoop into the Walking Ballista. Fair enough. Okay, so our opponent may be some sort of Maverick deck? Uncertain. I would very much like to have access to these Dismembers. And we'll trim a key and a forge. And I don't know if we want these other pieces. I'm just going to wait and see what our opponent does and then make some more educated decisions in a potential game 3. How do I feel about this hand? It is lacking that little extra oomph. Let's see if we can do better. Alright, this certainly has some oomph to it. I think we're going to get rid of the Fleshraker because the K command can deal with our opponent's problem creatures. And they're going to have Collector Roof in their deck. I'm sure of it. Alright, we're straight in with a Mox Diamond. And they're holding up some mana over there. A second Grim Monolith has entered the chat. Let's go. More manas. The old Colourless Cabal Ritual. You've got to love it. Yep. The Otawara, I suspect there is... This is like a Bant Maverick deck. That would be my guess. Grim Monolith, please. Do they have a Force of Vigor here? That would be pretty good. Let's go for a copy of the One Ring here with one floating. Consign to Memory is good. But we have another One Ring and we also have a Kozilek's Command, which can be a payoff if we need it to be. If we can draw a Planar Nexus, then all of a sudden we add so much mana to our board. Toxicrene. All lands have add 1 mana of any colour and lose all other abilities. At the moment, that doesn't hurt us. We're going to draw the Planar Nexus now, of course. Oh no, we didn't. Sure. Let's just have another copy of Grim Monolith. Untap our Grim Monolith here. More Grim Monolith, please. Maybe we didn't need to play the second one, but I would like to be able to cast something we draw off the One Ring here. A Vexing Bauble. Yes, this will stop our opponent from being able to Force of Vigor our things, which is something I'm a little bit concerned about. Right, we're going to get poked by the Toxicrene. No, we're not. We have the One Ring protection, right? Yeah, we have the One Ring protection. They're just sending a message. I approve. Hull Breacher. Well, well, well. That's a Magic the Gathering card, isn't it? Planar Nexus. Right, let's untap a Grim Monolith here. Let's... No, we need to exile their creature. Do we want mana or do we want to scry here? I think I'd rather have mana here, to be honest. Let's see if we can kill their Hull Breacher here and continue drawing some cards. Mox Opal, not the most useful one here. But next turn we get to draw more cards with the One Ring, and so on and so forth until we win the game. One thing that's worth saying about the One Ring is it's nice that Wizards of the Coast have printed a non-creature that's really busted. Because normally it's just creatures they print now that are busted. Are we about to get Hull Breachered? Let's find out. No is the answer to that one. Okay. Untap this Grim Monolith, please. Let's cast a Glaring Fleshraker. I shouldn't have used all the colours mana there. We do still have the spawns, but our opponent's just giving us the GGs already. We've got a lot going on there. So we finished this league with a 3-2, and 2-0, 2-0, 2-0, 0-2, and then a 1-2 split. We got absolutely wrecked by a Collector Roof. That is to be expected. And we also got wrecked by having all our lands destroyed over and over again. So let's talk about this list. At the very beginning of this video, I said that when this deck has Grim Monolith, it feels unbeatable. I think we won every game we played a Grim Monolith in. I'm pretty sure that's the case. I'd have to go back and check, but that's certainly how it felt. And that is very much how this deck seems to me. We're trying to get all these 4-drops and stuff out, and Basalt Monolith is just nowhere near as good as a Grim Monolith. Like, being able to play the Grim Monolith on 2 with like just 2 lands that don't tap for multiple mana is fine, but then if you start having to spend any more mana, it becomes a problem, and we definitely saw where having this in hand instead of a Grim Monolith just cost us against the lands matchup. If this deck had access to more Grim Monoliths, like if you could run 8 Grim Monoliths in this deck, I think it would be the best deck in the format, perhaps. It's just super busted when you have more of these. However, we didn't. And we certainly lost games because of our mana and because of Collector Roof. And that's not a huge surprise, really. And we also lost to the Nadu deck, which managed to do a similar thing to us where they draw a bunch of cards, except they're drawing counter magic and just more cards, basically. They just have their whole deck in their hand, and they can counter 4 spells as they see fit, and then they can also start doing some scary stuff post-board where they can instant speed tutor up a Collector Roof and that sort of jazz. So, how do I feel about this deck? I think what it's doing is incredibly powerful. It is incredibly linear, so there are things that can stop it. Now, last time I played this deck, we did manage to win games underneath Null Rod effects because of Fleshraker. If your opponent has got pressure and a Null Rod effect, you don't have a lot of wiggle room to get out of that. And whilst you can do it with Urza Saga constructs, as well as Glaring Fleshraker just being pretty bananas, like you can have Glaring Fleshraker and Mystic Forge, and you can play all these 1-drops that don't do anything, and 2-drops that don't do anything. But they're still pinging and giving you more mana, and then you just continually churning more and more out off the top of your deck until your opponent just gets killed by a Fleshraker. And we've done that to other people, and we've had it done to us in the past as well. So there is a little bit more play to this than just let's hope all my artifacts work. But when your artifacts don't work, it does become tricky. This particular list, the Karn, I felt like I wanted something interactive that I could get with the Karn that costs less than like the Mightstone and Weakstone. So some sort of 2-mana interactive card that can like deal with a creature or something. Now, what is that card? I don't know. I'm sure any of you fans of Mystic Forge out there will know the answer to that one. There are definitely a few different builds of this particular deck. Another thing I kind of missed a little bit was the Argentum Mastercore in the sideboard. That's a card that generally is a thing that you don't really want, but when you do want it, it becomes absolutely game-breaking. So I don't mind having cards like that. That's what I really like for wish boards, is having cards that are so niche that you don't want them very much unless you really want them, right? And then you can utilize them not being in your deck, polluting your deck. But obviously you still only have 15 spaces, and we have the selection of stuff that we're trying to bring in here. The Wastescape Battlemage is fine. I'm not overly impressed by it in this particular deck. I don't think we're reliably getting to actually kick it. And the reason it's in there is so we can kick it. I'm not sure if there's a better option for something like that. I don't think we can play any of the like 7 or 8 mana blow up whatever you want in Colourless. That doesn't seem like a great use. Another thing I kind of missed here actually is the Sky Sovereign. Sky Sovereign is a nice piece of interactive stuff you can do here. Although, how much are we realistically going to be crewing it? I guess what we're mainly going to be doing with it is plussing the Karn on the Sky Sovereign and then turning it sideways that way. But that's something that's not to be underestimated either. You can definitely tinker with the sideboard a little bit, but the main deck is pretty much as it is. Would I like to have access to a City of Traitors? I think last time I played this, the build I had City of Traitors in. I think it was running less workshops and had like 2 cities, something along those lines. And that felt a little bit better because you do need these soul lands. And this particular list only has 1 guaranteed soul land in it. And you kind of need as many soul lands as you can get your hands on, in my experience. So I wouldn't mind having some City of Traitors in here. The amount of lands in this deck usually swims between 16 and 20, with sort of everything in between. I think 18 is probably a sweet spot with 4 Tomb, 4 Saga, 4 Workshop, 4 City of Traitors, and then a couple of different tech lands, whether you want like Inventor's Fair or Blast Zone or something like that. I think those are probably where you want to tech. This is obviously teching into the Planar Nexus, which can give us some really good turn 2s, which we certainly did showcase, and that felt pretty strong. So I wouldn't completely write this off. But this also gives us the mana that we can channel into the Wastescape Battlemage as a useful sideboard card. So maybe this mana base is better for your post-board games, but it didn't feel as good for the Game 1 games as the City of Traitors heavy lists. let's have a look at this deck's matchups from Eternal Weekend Asia. So let's scroll down here. So if you look at all these things, what's the highest win rate on all of these? It is Mystic Forge combo. So this did have the best showing of any of the major decks from the Eternal Weekend Asia. And let's see what it's doing here. So it's pretty even with Reanimator. Like, you can just sort of go fast and ignore it. Sometimes they can disrupt you and you don't get there. Makes sense to me. 64% against Eldrazi Stompy. I did find this matchup against Eldrazi to be a bit of a joke. And they can't really do anything about what we're doing. So that makes a lot of sense here. Blue-Black Tempo is an abysmal matchup for this deck. But it's only 4 matches. So I would take that with a little pinch of salt. I think the matchup is better than 25-75. But it's certainly not a good matchup. The Mono Red Prison being good into that. Sure. You kind of just do a more broken thing that they can't interact with very easily. And you do it faster than they do. Sorry, this is Mono Red Prison. So you're just doing all your stuff. You don't really care about your lands being shut off for the most part. They're sort of more broken starts are like, we're going to make our 3 drops a turn early. It's like, okay, we're going to make 4 drops a turn or 2 turns early. And that just lets you outpace them. Painter, kind of even. Nadu Breakfast looks like a difficult one. I can certainly understand why. The other Nadu decks feel pretty good into this too. I keep saying it. Nadu is what you should be looking out for in Legacy right now. Sneak and Show, these sorts of matches are quite low in number as well here. So we don't really need to pay too much attention to those. But in terms of like the main few decks of the meta, which is this selection here, this has got some pretty good matchups. And one thing to say about this deck is it is intrinsically doing a powerful, proactive thing. So when you're against random decks, and if you play in a big tournament like Eternal Weekend, you're going to play against all kinds of weird and wonderful stuff, no doubt. So you're going to end up having a deck that is really proactive into them so you can just run them over. And that is something to have. That is one of the strengths of Reanimator, as we mentioned when we played it. I think it was yesterday for you lovely people, where it's, pretty even into the top of the meta stuff, but then it crushes everything else. And the Mystic Forge combo can kind of do a similar thing in a lot of ways, except it also has some better matchups into some of the top stuff, then also has some bad matchups as well. So I think Mystic Forge combo is a good shout for Eternal Weekend, but it's not a deck that I would play because I don't think it has the redundancy it necessarily needs sometimes. And certain things, as we've seen, can just completely throw you off balance. We are a dedicated linear combo deck. And if our opponent can disrupt that linear plan, like via Null Rod and Collector Roof and stuff, we kind of struggle quite a bit. Now, we do have some loopholes out of it and say, oh yeah, we don't just lose to Collector Roof because we can go and get Karn and blow it up with a Mightstone and Weakstone or whatever. But the problem is, your opponent isn't just playing a Collector Roof. If your opponent's mulliganing to just Collector Roof, then sure, maybe you get to beat that. But they've got a deck full of other cards that are doing things. And if they have anything that's relatively decent or efficient, they're going to be able to clock you whilst you're, trying to dig yourself out of a hole. So I feel that playing a deck like this is putting yourself at the mercy of opening hands a lot as well. That is something that would concern me a fair bit. I quite like decks where you have a little bit more agency, whether that's going to be like a bunch of cheap tutors or cantrips or whatever. I quite like having access to things like that. Whereas this deck, your opening hand needs to get there. And as we saw against the lands deck, okay, we had an opening hand that's pretty good, but if we never get to our second bit of mana, we never get to play the game, and that's pretty much just what happened. So there's definitely some pros and cons of running this particular deck. But it is just a very strong deck to do, and most importantly, if you're going to Eternal Weekend, you need to know this deck exists, and you need to know where its fail points are. So watching this and the previous league around with it, if you have an option to counter this Grim Monolith, maybe that's where you should be focusing, because this card does so much work for the deck. Like I said, when we have this card, it feels like we're unbeatable. When we don't have this card, it feels like we are just a bit slow and dragging behind, because this is kind of the main acceleration engine. Now, sure, we can do Soul Land into Soul Land and start playing some 4-drops, but it's the Monolith backed up by a bunch of keys that gets the engine going mana-wise, and if you want to undercut the mana of this deck, you can certainly slow it down by a few turns, and maybe that's enough to get your strategy over the finish line. So keep that in mind going into Eternal Weekend. Alright, I think we are done for today. I hope you enjoyed this one and my thoughts on it. Please remember to like and subscribe. If you want to see more Karn Forge content, please click in the description and you'll find the last time I played this video if you haven't already watched it. Last time I played this deck on a video. You can watch that one too. Alright, thank you so much for watching and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget Turbodepths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed Turbodepths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles, and lastly the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.